Hello, hello, good morning, and welcome to your Monday edition of the TMI Show, the Ted Manila Information Show. I am Manila Chan. That over there is Ted Rall. And of course, Ted, it was, a busy weekend in news. That's not supposed to be what happened. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about. And we talk about, of course, if you're new to the show, we talk about literally all the breaking news, culture stuff, diets, anything, everything goes. And warning to those with, sensitive ears. We do allow the F-bomb and other
we encourage
naughty
it.
words.
It's almost required.
If you want to be on this show, you must drop.
If you want to be invited back,
that's true. It's true. Even if I can't wait, Ted, until we get to that level where we're inviting like government officials from around the world, and we're like,
Prime Minister Trudeau. You're not going to come back on if you don't start dropping some F-bombs.
You're really going to have to get real here and get real talk and drop some F-bombs.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else. But he's not going to be prime minister much longer. And we'll get into all of that a little bit
true. Mm-hmm.
later in the show. So we are live Monday through Friday, of course, 10 a.m. Eastern time. So please be sure to like and follow the show. We are dangerously close to hitting that magic 500 number on YouTube.
Not that we're going to settle for that, because
of course not.
We want more. Yeah,
of course.
But we're so close. We want hundreds of thousands.
Yes. So if you guys are watching on YouTube and you haven't hit that subscribe button, please go ahead and hit that red subscribe button and give us a thumbs up to help us grow the program. Eventually before YouTube decides to ban us, Ted, because we don't know yet.
We don't want that.
Yeah, but YouTube, it's owned by Alphabet, Google. So,
but we don't want that. We're doing everything we can to follow the rules.
Ish. We're Rumble, the Rumble Room, folks. We love you. Thank you so much. Make sure you hit that.
We also love our X. We like our X people also,
and the X people,
and the audio only. Let's not forget them.
I'm sorry. I always forget because I don't post all of the audio stuff. So
producer Robbie does that, and we appreciate that. Yeah.
And we appreciate you audio only people.
And look, I wouldn't want to look at me either, so I get it.
Yeah, and this, if they're listening, and they're familiar with any of my work before, Ted, they're lucky they're not seeing the Manila that's off TV, because TV Manila has I have full regalia. I have a full team to make, my hair's like this big. I got all kinds of makeup on. That is not who is actually on the live stream. This might actually be a benefit for those listeners. You don't have to see real life Manila if you've been familiar with TV Manila forever. Like, don't ruin that image.
Mm-hmm.
Just think of me that way. It's like in good times where I had a hair and makeup team to help glamorize me.
I'm a little traumatized by hair, and I used to be a regular on Fox News, as you know, and you can still find bits and pieces of that around the internet. And anyway,
did you get a flock of seagulls' hair? Is that what they did to you? Like,
no, they like, my hair is flyaway, so they would kind of like lacquer it down for television. It looked good on TV. It looked weird in person. I looked like a member of Devo.
You get like Brett Baer's hair, like
I kind of looked like Mark Mothersbaugh. Yeah, like Brett Baer has good looking hair, actually.
You think so? I think it looks kind of like slathered down with.
Well, that's what they do there.
Real cream.
But one time, one of the Fox makeup artists, I mean, of course, it was an accident, but she scraped my cornea. With when she was doing the eye thing, and she scraped my eye, and for 20 years. It bothered me. Like whenever it was a windy day or I'm biking, it would start tearing up. Like she scraped it. Yeah. So, yeah, it was a substantial. I mean, your eye is fragile, obviously. So,
yeah. Well,
it doesn't take much to really fuck it up.
The toddler did that to me. I literally had to be off air for a week because I swear toddler nails. And all the parents know this, like are sharper than Japanese ginsu knives.
Oh, that's true.
They are sharp.
They're like
sharper
talons.
than Clovis's claws. Yeah, they are freaking talons. And my son scratched my corn, like narrowly missing like some important part that could have. I mean, just it could have been really bad. But anyway, I was a pirate and I had to wear a whole week, and they didn't let me be on TV with my eye patch. It worked for Dan Crenshaw. Why wouldn't it work for me, the congressman?
Mm-hmm. Arg.
McCain. But yeah. But anyway, yeah, they it would be hard to just do makeup on like one eye, I guess. So they were like,
right,
just leave her off here.
Right. Okay.
All right.
We have a lot of news to get to.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the main topic, of course, is like these Trump tariffs. He signed this executive order, and it's not official yet, Ted. I mean, it's official, but it doesn't kick in until midnight.
I mean, it's not like anything can stop it except Trump himself. So it's not like Congress can block it or anything. Yeah, basically he slapped tariffs against Canada, Mexico, and China. The Canadians are very upset about it. We're going to be talking to a Canadian editorial cartoonist, Michael Deatter, at the bottom of the hour for the Canadian reaction about how they feel about all this. Also, it's worth mentioning that the stock market, the securities markets, have plunged in heavy trading.
Responded.
The futures markets in Asia were down overnight, and right now the market opened up at 9:30 Eastern time, which is to say 37 minutes ago. We're now down 609 points. That's the Dow Jones Industrial Average. That's a 1.3% drop. And looking at it, and I used to work at Bear Stearns, so I have some experience looking at these charts. It looks to me like that's probably what we're going to see. This looks like we're seeing roughly a 1.5 point, maybe 2 point drop, and it looks like it's going to steady out there with profit taking, and we might see a little bit of a recovery later in the morning and in the afternoon. But I think basically it's going to be, we're left with about a 1.4, 1.5% drop for the day. But, we'll continue to watch it because it's pretty volatile.
Damn, right. Yeah, right out of the gates. All right. So with that, let's head into the headline news before we talk about the pain that's going to be inflicted on somebody, Ted. I don't know if it's the neighbors up north or the neighbors south,
or maybe ourselves.
Just pain. People are going to feel some pain. Let's talk about it. Let's go.
Okay, here we go. Can't believe I almost forgot about the Jaws. The fate of USAID, which is the U.S. Agency for International Development, appears bleak. Elon Musk says that President Trump has signed off on shutting the agency completely down. In Washington, USAID headquarters are closed for the day. Employees have been told in an email to stay home and work remotely. Logos and photos of its aid work have been stripped from building walls. The website and social media accounts have gone dark, replaced with a reduced version of its webpage on the State Department website. Lawmakers and aid workers have been bracing for Trump to shut down USAID and place it under the State Department, which it is not currently, a step that appears imminent this morning, however. With regards to USAID staff, I went over it with the president in detail, and he agreed that we should shut it down, Musk said in an X Spaces conversation earlier today. Trump himself affirmed his disdain for the agency and its mission of providing foreign aid during a Q&A session with reporters late yesterday. It's been run by a bunch of radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision on its future, he told reporters at Joint Base Andrews. The USAID workers were emailed shortly after midnight that they shouldn't bother to come into work in Washington today, according to multiple sources. You and I both have some experience and interaction, I think, with USAID. They have they have a lot of interaction. You will see them operating in various foreign countries around the world. And sometimes it's, I will say, very lame. I mean, personally, my really least favorite example of the kind of activity that they had was back in 2000. I went to Afghanistan via Tajikistan. Now, Tajikistan at the time was going through the end of a horrible 6-year civil conflict that killed half the population. Nobody cared. The population of the country literally dropped by half. No one paid attention because Tajikistan was not believed at the time to have any natural resources except for like rocks and ice. that turns out not to be true now. But anyway, I remember talking to Tajiks, and they talked about how frustrated they were because they'd see USAID trucks on their way to the Afghan border, passing starving Tajiks, but not stopping to help them in the middle of famine and civil war. Afghanistan was relatively stable at the time, and I followed some of those trucks into Afghanistan. Immediately upon arrival, they were unloaded by Northern Alliance soldiers and taken off to the bazaar to be sold on the black market. And no poor Afghans got them either. And they all, I remember being really annoyed seeing all these things at the bazaar that said, gift of the American people with the American flag on them, not for sale. And it's like, right where they're for sale. So incompetence. I mean, they've been accused of being biased and bad in a lot of other respects, and corrupt, which is probably true. But there's certainly incompetence is rife in USAID. No question about that.
Well, certainly for me, there is no love lost between me and USAID, and not because I went on one date with a USAID peace negotiator back in the day, but that's a different story.
I didn't know they did that. I thought that was a State Department job.
Well, so this USAID guy, for example, like he didn't trust me, and I didn't trust him on this date. It was very weird because obviously I just assume he's a spook, because as we know, USAID, when it goes to these foreign nations, often serves, more often than not, serves as a cover for
that's true.
CIA spooks all over the world. So they're in more than half the countries around the world. USAID is. And first of all, the name, I hate that it's called US Aid, and they do that on purpose because they want you to think we're bringing aid to you. And by some measures, sure.
There is some aid delivered. But it tends to be, like I said, it tends to fall off the truck long before it gets into any hungry mouths.
The name is actually U.S. Agency for International Development. And it's a very broad term. And part of international development, especially as it was spearheaded by Samantha Power, who we just saw in the last video under a Biden administration, a lot of that aid is
By the way, she just friended me on Facebook.
No.
I know.
Samantha Power? Gross.
The Samantha Power. I was like, what?
So part of the strings attached to get any sort of aid, and of course your slew of CIA operatives that come with the agency, you also get the NED that comes with it, right? The National Endowment for Democracy, because you have to play by USAID's rules. Like, for example, when she went, Samantha Power, when she went to Hungary a year or two ago, without informing Viktor Orban, didn't tell them that she was coming. Right? Wait, Hungary? Yeah, no. Yes, Hungary. She didn't tell them they were coming, and then she was putting together this whole coalition of civil society organizations and doling out U.S. money. And what that means, civil society organizations, is like, for example, up and coming young media ventures, right? And the rule was you have to push for human rights. And part of the human rights, if you look a little further, was for them, you have to fly the rainbow flag. You have to have literally one of the rules was you have to host a pride parade in your city in which your organization is based. If you want some of this sweet, sweet American greenback, you need to do that. And that's part of the USAID philosophy going all around the world. So there are so many strings attached. When you're going into a country like a Viktor Orban land, right, who is very conservative, very right-wing, very Orthodox Christian, not into the whole rainbow pride thing, you're directly undermining that local civilization and how they voted
or
you're
trying to, and more likely what you're doing is you're going to get them to turn you away, right? I mean, I do think that, I've said, I've had this conversation more times than I could count, and I'm sure I'll have them again. I mean, look, the best U.S. foreign policy is a no strings attached foreign policy. I mean, in places where we are not liked, we should basically leave people alone. And if they need help, like there's a natural disaster, we should come in, no questions asked, supply, drop aid, provide doctors, and then just leave and just say
always strings attached.
We're happy to help. That's it, and not try to change their form of governance or weigh in on their culture or their politics or whatever. I mean, look, I think it's. Look, I'm pro LGBT. I think it's great to have pride parades and all that. But it's in reality, you can't that's not. It's really just not the place to tell other countries what to do. I mean, focus on our own stuff. Plus, we have enough gay bashing here still in the U.S. that we can focus on. I mean, we don't need to be telling Hungary or any other country what to do. It's stupid. I mean,
I agree. I think if you're going to give aid and show the benevolence of the United States, then be benevolent. Benevolence doesn't have strings attached.
Never. Yeah. 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 Well, it's true. I mean, true love is unconditional, and that includes a true international diplomacy. And it's literally we'd like to be friends. You do you, we'll do us, but that's okay.
Right.
Anyway, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has taken some time off from killing dogs to end temporary humanitarian protections for approximately 350,000 Venezuelans who sought refuge in the U.S. over the past few years, putting them at imminent risk of being forced to return to Venezuela. Noem wrote that conditions in Venezuela no longer meet the criteria for its citizens to qualify for temporary protected status, which was set to expire in April for those who became eligible last year, according to a notice published by DHS, Department of Homeland Security. The Biden administration had extended their protections through the fall of next year, citing extreme poverty and economic and political crises. I'm like, if you're going to cite extreme poverty and economic and political crises, which, by the way, are mostly caused by American sanctions, it's like we could probably have half the world qualify for this status, right? But the Trump administration quickly reversed that decision. Noem also determined that allowing Venezuelans to live and work in the U.S. is contrary to the national interest, she said, citing gang activity, although actually criminals are ineligible for temporary protection. So that's kind of a lie, as well as the cost to cities such as New York to shelter migrants and other concerns. Trump said on Truth Social that Venezuela has agreed to take back any migrants who have come to the U.S. illegally. So, I guess that's going to be some of the first round of the mass deportations that we've been either dreading or anticipating, depending on your point of view.
So I was a little taken aback this weekend by that news in particular, because as you know, when Trump came into power the first go round, he was very quick to say that Maduro was illegitimate and recognize, oh gosh, what's his, I'm having Monday morning brain.
Guaido?
Thank you. Juan Guaido.
Okay.
I was going, looking Obama. No, Trump was quick to do that, right? And here we are in his second go around, and suddenly now you have these bilateral talks happening, maybe not at the presidential level, but given all of the recent, we'll say negative press, Ted, about the Venezuelan migrants, like in Colorado, for example, taking over whole entire apartment complexes of 100 plus units, right? I'm not talking about these little 8-plexes. I'm talking about whole big apartment communities with 100 plus units in them. And Biden didn't really do anything about it. And they were they didn't take over whole cities. They just took over, apartment complexes.
Some apartment complexes.
Yeah. Right. Whole Venezuelan gangs. So that's,
I love that they try to talk that down as if one building was acceptable.
Or one apartment itself, one unit.
Can
you imagine, Ted?
None of it is acceptable.
If your apartment building that you're sitting in right now was taken over by by Venezuelan gangs, and Mayor Adams was like,
I would be living in total terror. I mean,
the whole city is not taken over by Venezuelan gangs.
Right. It's not the whole city.
It's just Ted Rall's apartment building.
Yeah.
It's just Ted's building. Don't worry, he's fine.
Yeah,
he's totally fine.
Yeah, he's a guard cat. He's good.
Yeah. Right, he's fine. It's totally acceptable. It's fine. It's totally fine. None of that is acceptable. So I was really shocked that happened, and then very shocked to see Richard Grenell on the airplane. I'm going to pull up the image. Well, first of all, like here's Grenell at the presidential palace, like meeting Maduro. This was kind of a shocker. Like what? Like, oh, I got to put that on screen. There you go. So look at that. Grenell is like the special envoy. He was with Trump the first time. He was serving in what Kristi Noem's secretary position is right now, but as an interim the last time. So I think Grenell is a really trusted guy to Trump. And then he, out of the blue, I didn't even know this was being worked on. Grenell ends up leaving with 6 detained Americans from Venezuela. Like that, I had no idea that was being worked on, but this stuff doesn't happen overnight. That tells me that the Trump team had actually been talking with the Venezuelan team prior to January 20th.
Absolutely. No question.
And which, do you think that's okay? Is that acceptable? Are you
I think it's, look, I have to say, if I were I mean, I think it is okay. The outgoing administration probably didn't have much objection to it because they knew they weren't going to be able to wrap it up before January 20th. And so, you know, and I think the word was that Biden's team decided to cooperate with Trump's transition team. You know, frankly, something that Trump did not do with Biden's team in 2020 at all.
Right.
And I think they and it's to the greater good. I mean, this is what you would want to see if you were, you know, an American citizen being held abroad and hoping to come home to your family. You would hope that Democrats and Republicans would put that crap aside, and that's what happened here. So good for Biden, good for Trump. I mean,
I agree.
This was good.
That gives me a little bit of hope about the Trump administration, and further to that is that I think if they were willing to cooperate on letting these guys come home, and Maduro saying that he's going to accept this plane load or multiple plane loads of illegal migrants from Venezuela and repatriate them back, that to me opens the door for a potential détente between our two countries, and that he will now recognize Maduro as the president, number one. Number two,
there's a strong chance that will happen.
And perhaps drop the sanctions, and you know, we can actually have a normal, civilized,
and we should drop the sanctions because, and look, Venezuela, they are the largest or one of the largest oil and natural gas producers,
the biggest
in the Western Hemisphere, right? So we are very dependent on Venezuela. They have some leverage here. Trump's well aware of that. You know, especially since he just slapped, as we're going to talk about in a few minutes with Michael Deatter, slapping tariffs on crude imported from Canada. So if we don't need he's going to want to mitigate any spike in gas prices. So Venezuela definitely plays into that. Let's keep going here. Okay, the U.S. is about to hold talks with both Russia and Ukraine to try to settle the Russo-Ukrainian war, Trump is now saying. He says that discussions are going pretty well. Trump says that the U.S. is trying to resolve a few crises. As far as other things are concerned, we had a very busy weekend. We're dealing with Israel, we're dealing with Ukraine and Russia, he said. We have meetings and talks scheduled with various parties, including Ukraine and Russia, and I think those discussions are actually going pretty well, he said. His comments came after Keith Kellogg, special envoy for Ukraine from Trump, suggested that both the Ukrainians and the Russians will have to make concessions for a peace deal to be reached. I think both sides will give a little bit, he said. I think the Ukrainians are going to give a little more, but that's just me. Kellogg added that Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky was already considering changes to his stance on ruling out any formal territorial concessions. Zelensky's already indicated he will soften his position on land, he said. At the same time, the envoy said that Putin is going to have to soften his positions as well. Really?
I don't know. When you're winning,
what he's going to soften on. Yeah.
When you're winning, are you usually the one that makes the concession? I don't think that's usually how that works.
Yeah, also what Putin has asked for is probably pretty much where things are going to end up, no matter what.
Yeah, and I thought Zelensky. So I guess he's backing off, Ted, of the whole firm commitment to getting every square inch, every inch of Ukraine back.
Kellogg says it's not years we're talking about. We have a solid action plan. He says a deal could be done within a few months. Kellogg says the U.S. wants the Ukraine to have some elections. As a democracy, maybe that's something they should try out. Potentially, maybe they could get rid of all the fascist memorials they have all over the place. Potentially by the end of the year, Ukraine has suspended presidential and parliamentary elections. They say it's martial law, but as if martial law dropped down from the sky. It's Zelensky himself who declared martial law and then said, well, I can't have an election because of martial law. Anyway, Zelensky's term expired last May. Moscow, of course, sees him as illegitimate as a result, saying that the only legal authority now rests with the Ukrainian parliament and its speaker. I think technically speaking, what the Russians are doing, what the Ukrainians are doing is technically okay under their constitution, but it goes against the spirit of their constitution. It's like a cheat. You know what I mean? Russian officials have stated that they are open to talks with the U.S. on the Ukraine conflict, but emphasized that no substantial agreements on discussions have now been reached. So that's what we thought was going to happen, and it looks pretty good. I'm pretty optimistic about it. I think they're going to end this thing. I think we're going to have, by the time June rolls around, I think the things are going to be really moving in the right direction there. I suspect,
spring thaw.
I think here's what we're going to see. Ukraine will acknowledge that Crimea is part of Russia. Ukraine will, what the compromise for the Donbass will be, is that the Donbass which has been annexed into Russia, will be viewed by Ukraine as still part of Ukraine, but in the same way that Kurdistan is still part of Iraq. Like, it's completely autonomous, never coming back, bye-bye. But like theoretically, we call it, like on the map, it's theoretically in Ukraine. But in reality, it's completely administered by the Russians, and the UKs will have to agree not to join NATO. I think which they can't anyway, because they have problems. Yeah,
that's been the hard line, Russia's position on this for 25 years, right? It's not like this is a new thing that the Russians decided on 2.5 years ago. Or 3 years ago, right? Or even 10 years ago. This has been literally the Russian position. It's not a Vladimir Putin thing. It is a whole Russian Duma thing. This is the one thing that every single party within the Russian Duma has agreed on. The one thing. Remember, there's socialists in there, there's communist groups in there, there's the liberal leaning side, there's the Putin's conservative leaning side, and they all agree on this one thing: Ukraine cannot, will not, and shall never join NATO. That is the one hard line, and that'll guaranteed that it'll never happen. So I think,
not to mention, they're not qualified to join NATO, because
I agree.
You can't join NATO if you have a territorial boundary dispute. Okay, well,
right, and
there's one hell of a boundary dispute here. Okay,
hell of that, and of course, the concessions are not going to be made by Russia. It's Zelensky. I think it's fair that the Russians say, look, if you want us to negotiate with somebody, you need to pony up somebody that is duly elected by their people.
Well, not to mention, with all the shit that Zelensky has said about the Russians, it's kind of like almost like it's almost like hard to. He made it illegal. He passed a law saying it's illegal.
Talk to them.
Yeah, to talk to them. So, we're down at 10:30, so we should probably. I don't know if we see our guest yet.
Our guest is there. We see
okay, hi Michael. We're going to get to you in a second here. All right, here we go. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Panamanian President Jose Raul Molina to discuss the Panama Canal. Rubio has warned Molina that Panama could face retaliation from Washington unless it reduces what Trump considers to be China's influence over the canal. But I've always wondered what that specifically means. And what that specifically means, according to Rubio, is that there's 2 port authorities at both ends of the canal that are run by China as part of the Belt and Road Initiative. And they claim that could make the waterway vulnerable to political pressure from China. Molino described his meeting with Rubio as respectful and positive. Noted the fact that Rubio made, quote, no real threat of retaking the canal or the use of force, which is good. Rubio told Molino that Trump believes that China's presence in the canal may violate the treaty that was originally negotiated between the U.S. and Panama to turn it over. That was Jimmy Carter who negotiated that treaty. But the actual turnover occurred in 1999. That treaty calls for permanent neutrality. But it doesn't. This whole point may be moot anyway, because Panama said that its government does not plan to stay in the Belt and Road Initiative anyway. So it's like whatever.
Yeah, I think this was a whole to do about nothing. The Panama. It was just. I think it's a lot of political rhetoric. That's all it was. It's one of those things that Trump just says. You know, he's like.
We're does a lot of that.
We're going to repossess the Panama Canal.
Right. No, I mean, he should talk to dead George H.W. Bush. We already had a war in Panama. Which, by the way, there's a lot of stuff about that war that most Americans don't know. Like, the U.S. troops massacred a lot of Panamanian civilians and buried them in mass graves there in Panama. And like, that's sort of like, it was a brutal conflict. We always think it's like, and not to mention also, there's no evidence that Manuel Noriega was guilty of cocaine possession. They found white powder in his freezer. And by the way, he's the president of another country. How is he subject to American law in any way, shape, or form? It's garbage, right? But anyway, on top of that, he was innocent. When they tested it, it turned out to be flour. He said, that's flour in a tortilla. And it was flour in a tortilla. Oh. And it didn't matter. The judge was like, well, it could have been cocaine. I mean, it's insane. They literally they literally kidnapped the president of another country and brought him to an American prison and let him rot to death. I mean, how would we feel if someone did that to Trump? I mean, half of us would be pleased. But I mean, it's really, it's insane.
Yeah. And by the way, can we point out what a fun flag they have? Look at their flag.
Oh, yeah. We should, Scott could talk about that flag. He's a vexologist, and that's someone who studies flags. Yeah, he collects flags. He flies them in his backyard. He was, I got him a Taliban flag. He was so happy.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's not an easy one to get. Not an easy one to get. Anyway.
Interesting. All right.
All right, here we go. Odds are a funny thing. This is the last story here before we go to Michael. 1 in 100, for example, sounds like a long shot until you find out it's the chance that an asteroid will hit, the Earth, the planet where we all live. In a surprising but not definitive turn of events, early warning systems this week determined that an asteroid that's going to go near Earth, or maybe not so near, in Earth, in 2032, has a 1 in 63 chance of smashing into, the Earth. Here's what you need to know. NASA's Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, known as ATLAS, in Chile, spotted the asteroid on December 27th. ATLAS reported the asteroid to the Minor Planet Center. That's a clearinghouse for the positional measurements of small bodies like asteroids and comets. The asteroid is between 130 and 300 feet wide. Based on estimates from its reflected light, it's currently moving away from the Earth at 8.24 miles per second. According to NASA's Center for Near-Earth Object Studies, it could make impact on Earth 6 discrete times between the years 2032 and 2071. But the biggest doomsday day is December 22nd, 2032. The probability of this asteroid, which is called 2034 YR4, hitting the Earth actually goes down each time it goes by. For people who are wondering, well, how big could this be? There's a big prehistoric crater lake impact mark in Michael DeAtter's neck of the woods up there in Quebec. You remember 2 years ago, my son and I went on a trip across like Labrador and the maritime provinces of Canada. And I noticed on the map this big circular lake. It's a perfect circle and with an island in the middle. And I'm like, what is that? Is that a reservoir? Like, why is it a perfect circle? And then I read it's actually like a possible partial extinction event, but it was tens of millions of years ago. And that big bastard came in there, and it's massive. And you would, I stayed in a cabin along the side of that lake, and I was like, man, you would not have wanted to be here when that fucker came in there, or anywhere nearby. I mean, it's...
Yeah, but wouldn't this asteroid, first of all, we need to point out that we are in grave danger, mostly because we are no longer making asteroid movies, and none of those actors are going to be available to be shot up onto the asteroid to blow it up.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And we won't have President Morgan Freeman by then.
Right. And Bruce Willis, in his current health condition, he can't save us.
Oh, wait, he can be president. We've established that for the last 4 years.
Yes, that is true. Bruce Willis's current condition, he could be POTUS.
Anyone could be president. Yeah.
And so he has the experience about, dealing with these asteroids.
That's
so
true.
we're in danger, great peril there. But my second question would be that
a 1.4% chance when it's an asteroid hitting the Earth is high, Yeah,
well, but the size of this thing, wouldn't it be kind of whittled away coming through?
It depends at the angle. It depends on the angle at which it hits. There's a lot of, there's a lot of moving parts, right? The Earth is spinning. The Earth is moving, is going around the sun. It moves really fast.
Whittled down.
And so it depends on what, where and when it comes in at what angle. But if it comes in at a sharp angle, it's less likely to burn up in the atmosphere. Certainly you'll lose part of it. Some of it will disintegrate. But the thing is, when they're really big, they don't all completely disintegrate. It also depends on what it's made of, right? They're not all made. They're not made of the same hardness. So there's a lot of variables.
Diamonds. Maybe diamonds.
Oh well, that would be bad. Diamond would be bad. So let's go ahead and bring in our guest. All right, we're going to talk about tariffs. Trump made good on his threat to slap tariffs on Mexico, China, and Canada over the weekend. All imports from China now face a 10% duty. It's 25% on imports from Mexico and Canada. Canadian oil, natural gas, and electricity will be taxed 10%. Trump's order also includes a mechanism to escalate the rates charged by the U.S. against retaliation by the other countries, raising the specter of even more economic disruption. Trump, and speaking of that economic disruption, Bitcoin is down from last week's high of $106,000 to $96,000. The Dow Jones Industrial Average currently has rebounded quite considerably, actually. It plunged 600 points on opening. Now we're just merely down 200 points, which at 44,300 is not a big deal. It's down half a point right now. But obviously, that number is going to bounce around. Volatility is definitely the right word to describe it. Trump wants China, Mexico, and Canada to stop the manufacture and export of fentanyl, and that Canada and Mexico reduce illegal immigration into the U.S. I was unaware that Canadians had illegal immigration to the U.S. But anyway, the tariffs could cause inflation to worsen. They're likely to cause turmoil in supply chains and have an impact on financial markets, though not immediately. To help us break this down, I can think of no one better than Michael Deatter, my friend and colleague. He's a Canadian editorial cartoonist. His work also appears regularly in the Globe and Mail, which is the big paper in Toronto up there. He's in the Washington Post quite a lot. He's a past president of the Association of Canadian Editorial Cartoonists and is on the board of the Cartoonists' Rights Network. Weekly, he draws about 10 cartoons, and at over 1 million readers a day, he's considered the most widely read cartoonist in Canada. I hope they don't impose any tariffs on his cartoons. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, Michael. Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Michael, what is the, we saw Justin Trudeau's speech. I thought it was a really good one. It was very powerful, where he talked about how Canadians have fought and died alongside Americans in their various conflicts around the world, that Canadians are hurt and confused and feel picked upon, like unfairly. They didn't come looking for this fight, and now here it's thrust upon them. Is that right? Is that like a widespread view?
That is, we're a little more into it now. Canadians, mostly what I see online, they want to fight back. They're not putting up with this. So I don't know how much that will affect the trade war, but Canadians are full on in support of tariffs back, punishing tariffs back.
So now, so who do you think is? I mean, I know you're not an economist, right? And neither am I. But I mean, who's going to get the worst end of this, right? Who's more dependent? I mean, who's going to? Obviously, prices are going to go up. What happens with tariffs is it doesn't usually have the entire price of the tariff doesn't usually get passed on to consumers, but certainly some of it does.
Oh yeah, 25%. You're going to get a lot of. The consumer's going to bear not just the brunt of it, but by far the most of that. It's
so inflation.
We could bear the brunt of it, but the difference is that Canadians are willing to, at least right now. I mean, it's day what? It's not even day one yet. The tariffs are coming into effect tomorrow, or supposed to. But Canadians are willing to put up with a bit of inconvenience right now. I'm not sure Americans are willing to put up with that same inconvenience. So it might not be about who's going to feel it in the pocketbook, but who's going to feel it electorally or in the polls. Now, Trump's only 2 weeks in. Believe it or not, it feels like 2 years already. But it's only
it does.
So he has time to rebound. But if this goes crazy like it's going to go crazy. It's going to affect him. It's going to affect everything is going to affect him.
Is Trump high on fentanyl? I mean, like I have no awareness at all.
It's that Mexican there's illegal fentanyl if it is.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's no fentanyl coming in any significant number from Mexico or illegal. I mean, Canadians aren't sneaking into the United States either. I mean,
no, from Mexico, no.
We don't want to go to the United States. There's nobody I know that wants to go to the United States right now. I mean, I don't know about people sneaking in, and the fentanyl. It's China and Mexico that are that.
That's true.
That are you're getting all your fentanyl from, not Canada. We got caught with, I think, one guy trying to sneak in. I don't know.
Well, let me ask you guys this: if everybody agrees that, and it seems like everyone does agree that tariffs, especially between neighbors, are a really bad idea and seemingly out of the blue. Everyone says, oh, it's going to hit everybody's pocketbook. Why would Justin Trudeau respond in kind? Isn't that then going to translate to hurting the pocketbooks of everyday Canadians?
Yes, it will. But we're willing to pay a bit of a price here. The population is anyways, a little bit. While I guess the government is betting that the American population isn't willing to put up with that. So they're trying to make it more difficult, or as difficult as they can. And
it's a game of economic chicken.
And they're targeting, they're not targeting blue states, they're targeting red states. So, things like Florida orange juice, bourbon, Kentucky bourbon, things like that.
So it's a list of things. It's not across the board like what Trump is doing.
No, it's not across the board at all, because we don't want to hurt our northern neighbors. We don't want to impede trade so much as hurt Trump.
Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, why do you think, the mystifying thing to me was, aside from the fact that it happened at all, the numbers, right? I mean, if China, I can really see, China, America's beef with China, right, is that we let them sell their stuff here, but they're not so good at letting us sell our stuff there. That's been a longstanding problem for decades, or at least it's been a complaint. I'm not
problem
sure if
it's here too. Problem in Canada too.
So, but the thing is, China seems to be by far the bigger, player here. How come those tariffs are only 10%, and Canada and Mexico, who are our partners ever since NAFTA, and are getting 25%?
I think because he had talked to Trump at the inauguration or something, or that, like Trump Trump's easily persuaded when you get him alone in a room. So it's possible that the president of China got a hold of Trump. I mean, but who knows, right? I'm totally speculating. I mean, I'm a political cartoonist, not. I don't have any insight in anything other than, HB pencils and 2B pencils.
Go ahead, Manila.
I was going to say, with Trudeau on his way out, and you guys are trying to pick a new prime minister very soon. How do you think that's going to play into the domestic politics in your country, given that Trudeau's, obviously he's trying to fight back with whatever measures he can while he's still in office. But how are you hearing language coming from, I don't know who's going to be ponied up to run the party or to, become the next prime minister, but how are those people responding to Trump's tariffs?
Well, I do think that there's a certain amount of conversation going on between the prime minister and the leaders to be, or at least there seems to be with Mark Carney, one of the leaders to be. The other potential future prime minister is Chrystia Freeland, who was in the Trudeau government. So I do think that, by looking at it as an outsider looking in, which is what I'm always am, I think the way Mark Carney is I think he's informed. It just seems like he's informed on everything. Chrystia Freeland's probably somewhat informed as well. I'm not sure, but it does create some difficulties. Trudeau is very unpopular, especially with conservatives, and the conservatives are flying high in the polls right now. They're at 45%, which is if a leader, that would be like a leader getting 52% in the States, because we got a multi-party system. So, yeah.
What about the alliance? The feeling of the alliance between the U.S. and Canada. I mean, the alliance between the U.S. and Canada is so close that I think, or has been, that Americans just take it for granted, right? I mean, it's sort of like we often think that we're told that the UK is our closest ally. I don't think that's really true.
No,
I think Canada is our closest ally.
Even when George W. Bush and Tony Blair were best friends, and we didn't get involved in the second Gulf War, which was the legacy of our Prime Minister Jean Chrétien. We're always your best friend. I mean, you can't get away from us. I mean, we just don't make a lot of noise about it. We don't invade other countries, or tend not to. I mean, we don't do things that are high profile or in your face. We just quietly remain your BFF.
Right.
Sit at home and look at the locket of the U.S. while. But we've always, we went to Afghanistan. We lost around 150 soldiers in Afghanistan fighting your war after 9/11. We didn't go to Iraq because we thought it was stupid, but normally we would have. We fought side by side, World War I, World War II, Korea, first Gulf War, Afghanistan. And we had planes in Libya, and we've fought side by side forever. We did sorties in Kosovo, with the U.S. In control. In fact, when I was in the U.S. for a cartoon convention, a Canadian was the head of NORAD at the time, and so we're just intertwined. We just don't, make a big deal out of it.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm, as someone who travels, I'm really used to having to be embarrassed and explain my country when I travel in the Middle East and like Central Asia and South Asia. But going to Canada and having to do this is going to be really, it's going to be a new experience.
You know what? We know Trump. We don't hold it against, I've had my fair share, or I've seen my fair share of Americans apologizing to Canadians, or I think I saw Billy Baldwin write "Buy Canadian," which upset a lot of Americans. We see you apologizing for Trump, but we know Trump inside and out. We almost follow American politics more than we follow our own boring politics. I mean, it's pretty boring up here, half the time. So we know where this is coming from. This is not personal. It won't, if it affects our allied status, it'll only last until Trump's gone. It won't last very long, and I don't think it's going to affect that. I think we're a friend to the U.S. Pretty much no matter what happens. I mean, this is a setback, but we know that it's not personal.
Do you think this is, do you think this is just a typical Trumpian bluff that might end quickly? Like maybe, maybe not as quickly, but we saw what happened with Colombia, also a close trading partner with the United States. And, basically it lasted 3 hours where there was an exchange of threats, exchange of tariffs. And then the whole thing was like, okay, sorry, our bad, never mind. We're good again. Do you think this will be wrapped up after a few phone calls?
Well, I think Trump's in a really messed up place in his head. I mean, he's always has been. But if you notice, something crazy happened on the first day, which was he told Putin to get out of Ukraine or stop the war in Ukraine, like as if that was just going to happen in minutes after he said it. I mean, it was ridiculous that, I could just picture Putin laughing at him. And I honestly think that he thought that we did overreact, and I wouldn't say it's overreacting. There's problems with the border, but we did throw money into our border. But we didn't bend over backwards about it. We sort of, quietly increased security on the border, put more money into it, and did a bunch of joint things with U.S. Customs. But it wasn't. I think Trump honestly expected everybody to behave like Colombia. Whatever we will do. And we didn't, and Mexico didn't, and China's not going to, I think Trump doesn't know where he's going with this.
You think he's spitballing it? He's just throwing it at the wall.
I gotta interrupt 1 second. Breaking news. There's a pause already on the tariffs with Mexico for 1 month.
Yep, just seeing that too. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well that means Canada's coming. It's just a matter of conversing, having someone talk to Trump, the last person Trump talks to, So yeah. Trump needs an off ramp, and I guess Mexico's giving it to him, and we will probably give it to him too. Nobody wants a trade war.
Yeah, I think I've heard that before from people that are, within from the first Trump White House, is that really whoever's the last person to whisper in his ear is the one who wakes up the next morning or in the middle of the night and starts tweeting, Kofi fee or whatever, because somebody put that in his head.
Look at Newsom. We waited all day in the airport for Trump to show up, and within 3 seconds of talking to Newsom on the tarmac in LA, Trump pretty much did a U-turn on everything about about voting, and he didn't really backtrack on it completely. You're still talking about it, but you know what I mean. He
softens his tone almost immediately. I mean, he's a lot of bluster.
Yes, it's bluster half the time. That's the problem, though. It's only half the time that it's bluster. Sometimes he means it.
That's true.
And
but it sounds like you Canadians are way calmer about it.
Forced into doing the stupid thing he said he was going to do, and that's kind of where we're at right now. Mexico, okay, so Mexico's giving a month reprieve. It's just a matter of time before Canada's given one. He's trying to save face. Right. Trump knows that the economy's doomed. All you have to do is look at New York Stock Exchange today. All you have to do is, you know,
By the way, the stock market is bouncing back on this news. After a 600-point drop, the net from close on Friday is just down 177 right now. That's a 0.4% drop net. So that after a 1.5% drop at the opening. So you'd expect some profit taking anyway, but that's a pretty dramatic reversal.
Ted, you know how concerned I was about the avocado market and my guacamole.
Well,
deeply
avocados
concerned.
Was an important thing this week. It's Super Bowl week.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Wait, you
avocados is all over the news up here. We're not
really.
Thank you, my Canadian friends. I love Canada.
Can you get good avocados up there? Because I mean, here in New York, it's hard to get a decent avado because they travel so far that they're kind of gross and hard by the time they get here.
I ate an excellent avocado, right straight from Mexico, just
wonderful.
Like 15 minutes before I got on here.
That's a shine bomb avocado.
I had it with an egg, and my eggs were only like under $4 still.
All right.
Only. Wow. Well, yeah, that's the thing that made Biden wildly unpopular, and I didn't know that the same thing was happening in Canada price-wise for your eggs.
No, it's not as bad here. Eggs, anyways. Everything else is off the rails, but eggs are okay.
Huh.
You can have eggs and avocado. That's a good breakfast.
That is a good breakfast.
Eggs and avocado, and it didn't cost me like $45.
No, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, it's what it seems to me, and I had for many years in my early 20s, I had good friends from Canada, and they're always much calmer than us Americans. You guys are much more, chill, a little calmer of a people, whereas Americans are kind of always hair on fire. And so the way you guys are taking this tariff threat, it sounds like if you're a representative of Canadians, writ large, and I would say, my friends are like that too. You're just kind of like, let's see what happens. It's fine.
Well, we're panicking a bit. It depends what you do for a living. We're panicking a bit, but we're showing a brave face in front of Americans. Don't let them see you sweat. But what can you do? We didn't do anything.
No, you really didn't.
We didn't do anything.
You guys didn't do anything.
Nothing.
That's why I'm shocked. I mean, I thought it was Trump that tore up Clinton's NAFTA, created his USMCA thing in his first term, but now it's basically like he's spitting on the very thing that he brokered, the USMCA. And what does he want, a new one? I don't understand why he's doing this. Like I thought we were cool.
I think this is what I think. I think he would have done this the first day back in his first administration, but he was hampered by there being reasonable people in the White House. There's nobody reasonable in the White House right now because he's getting rid of anybody reasonable. And this is what he wanted to do. But he was talked out of it by reasonable people who told him that the economy would tank. So instead of implementing tariffs, punishing tariffs, and going that route, he went the route of renegotiating NAFTA. He's just a bull in the china shop. He had no plan to renegotiate. Well, he might have had plans to renegotiate NAFTA, but the way that went about, that was just him being hindered. Now he's not being hindered, and that's the problem. That's why he's going after everything.
It's so strange.
Aid today. I mean, that should be USAID should be the number one story. He's throwing so many flying monkeys into the air. You don't know which flying monkey to watch, and that's all on purpose. we're talking about NAFTA, but we could be talking about USA. We could be talking about any number of things, all the watchdogs that he fired.
Yeah.
He's getting away with so much. And, when the media is actually paying attention to something that he doesn't want them to pay attention, he says they're eating the cats and they're eating the dogs. He goes full on crazy. What did he say the other day that was full on? I can't even remember. There's so much crazy, but he just dropped everything. Said basically they're eating the cats and dogs, just another version of it. And the media just went, oh, they're eating cats and dogs, and ran for that. While he's getting rid of watchdogs. He's destroying the fabric of American society all in one big go, so you can't pay attention to what's going on.
What will you be cartooning about? Is it going to be this?
It'll be trade. Listen, I go after the things Trump doesn't want you talking about. So I may switch from trade and go talk about one of these other issues. There's so many right now.
Ooh, you know what Justin Trudeau left out, and I think Ted will agree. I think Trudeau could have played a much stronger hand here and said, we are recalling all of our Canadian hockey players, and you're not going to get any of our all-stars down there anymore. We're going to cancel the NHL, and I think that would create a major riot. I'm just saying. I think that
it could.
Well, it
would have an effect here in New York,
city
for
you're
sure.
in. Yeah, it would cause a riot.
New York's a big hockey city.
Yeah, big hockey cities for sure. Nashville's a big hockey city now.
That's very strange.
Las Vegas is a big hockey city now. They weren't a few years ago.
Well, because they were starved for sports.
You must know this, but I was shocked to learn that a lot of the famous Soviet hockey team in 1980, I guess it was, or 1984, something like that, that they were from Uzbekistan, which, it gets hot there. It's like 120 degrees in the summer.
Yeah, well... I don't know where to go with that. But.
All right. Well, that seems like a good place to wrap up. So thanks, Michael, for joining us. Really appreciate you coming on, especially because it was kind of last minute. And on behalf of my fellow citizens,
a real Canadian,
please convey our apologies and our embarrassment
on
behalf of our president.
I've gotten so many apologies from Americans this week. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's really like, oh my God. All right, that's Michael DeAdder. He's a Canadian editorial cartoonist whose work appears regularly in the Globe and Mail, the Washington Post. He's considered the most widely read cartoonist in Canada. Thanks for joining us, and hope you'll come back. And always good to talk to you.
Not the Washington Post anymore. I'll just say that.
Okay, no longer the Washington Post.
No, that was awful. Okay, we'll see you later.
Thank
Bye,
you
Michael.
so much.
Bye.
All right, that was fun.
I
love Michael. He's great.
You're a good lot. You're a good small lot.
Aren't we though? I mean, I've been trying to pitch Hollywood for years about doing like a cartoonist's like political talk show where we get together over beers at a bar and we talk about like the days or the week's political events and show the cartoon that we drew about it, because we're a good lot, right? Like we talk good.
Everyone's a good talker. Everyone that all the cartoonists you've ever introduced me to, they're good talkers. They're easygoing, good sense of humor. Smart. Obviously required. It's required. Those things are required, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and it's almost like this. You guys are kind of like this weird esoteric group that no one really knows about, or like, where are you? It's like gorillas in the mist. Got to go find them deep in the jungles.
We need Miss Fosse to find us.
Like that would have been an interesting show. And I think it's not too late, Ted. I think you need to write a pitch.
I know. I need to get my agent.
Get your agent
off his ass.
Yeah. Because as you said, after the old dude that died last month.
Jules Pfeiffer. Almost 96 years old.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are literally a dying breed. It'd be
Oh yeah, no, I'm 61. I'm young. There's almost
You're the baby.
Yeah, I'm the child.
You're the
Wet
baby
behind the ears. I mean, seriously, it's really sad. I mean,
Yeah.
this is an art form that goes back to the Etruscans, and it's like we're just being killed, and it's not because there's no demand. It's because no one will publish it. It's like it's being censored. Like if you just think about like CBSNews.com, no political cartoons, right? But they have articles. They have lots of words, right? But they have lots of photos. All the stuff that used to be in a newspaper. Did you hear that the Newark Star Ledger closed yesterday?
Oh no, I didn't. I remember I used to look at on USA Today, the Sunday Funnies. That's what I used to grab as a kid. That's what I grew up looking at. I remember.
What was your local paper?
No, we had the Whittier Daily News, but I don't know if that we.
Well, you must have also had the LA Times, right? Would have been.
Yeah, we had the LA Times, of course. Is the next. Whittier Daily News was like the local, and then of course the LA Times, and then of course everybody got the New York Times, but USA Today was like what I remember liking as a kid.
USA Today, my favorite slag that I ever heard about. It used to be given away in like motels and hotels everywhere across the country. You'd get it for free, but it was like it's the news source for people who don't have time for the more in-depth coverage of television.
And that's like to, a 10-year-old me. It was like, let's read the paper.
Sure.
As I'm eating my cereal.
It was colorful, which at the time was unusual.
That's exactly it. And I think that's what drew me to it. That's right. And to a kid, that was, that's eye-catching versus the LA or the New York Times, which is back in those days in the 80s was still rows of columns, just rows of pieces of columns that start, and this is how it used to look, right? Where it was still just columns in the front, and then it would tell you at the bottom, continued on A10 or whatever, right? Like A6 or whatever page it was. People don't even know what I'm saying right now, Ted.
That's called the jump, is what that's called.
Am I right? People don't even realize what I'm saying right now.
Yeah, they do not know what you're talking about. Yeah.
When I say the end of the column, it says go to A4.
Yeah.
And they don't know. They don't know what that means, but which is sad. But anyway, that's why a 10-year-old Manila was reading USA Today, because it had a lot of colors, the big blue ball, the globe on it, and then they had colored cartoons, which
that was unusual. Although they were poorly colored because they weren't colored by the individual cartoonists. Cartoon back then, the cartoons were all done in black and white, and then some like hacks, like they outsourced it to some company, so they were all colored
when they print it. When they run the print, the person there picked the colors, or what?
Well, no. So like, let's say USA Today, they received it. They'd have a company that would color their cartoons. They'd send the art out, and then they'd come back. They'd be sent back, and then they could. So the point, though, is that I use a different color scheme than Scott Stantis uses. He uses a different color scheme than Michael DeAtter uses. They're different. We have different palettes. Well, that back then, all the comic strips that used color, they all had the same color scheme. By the way, a funny color scheme story. I used to work at United Feature Syndicate, which distributed Peanuts. And the Times of India was the biggest client. The Times of India is the biggest English language newspaper in the world. Until fairly recently, it had 15 million subscribers.
Wow.
In the English language. And anyway, the Times of India would run. You agree when you run a comic strip like Peanuts that you don't alter it, right? Like it comes and you leave it that way contractually. But in India, they made Snoopy brown.
Snoopy was brown?
Snoopy was brown. And I was and I asked my boss about it, and she said, "It's the Times of India, man. We can't lose that client. We're letting Snoopy be brown."
It's Indian Snoopy. Go ahead.
Indian Snoopy. I was like, and I've been to India, and I've seen light-colored dogs, so I don't understand, really.
Like, why wouldn't Snoopy's supposed to be a white beagle?
Well, they considered him to be the main character. I'm not sure they were aware, maybe, that the editors were aware that he was a dog. So.
No.
I don't know what happened there.
Right.
Well, they made him brown. Yeah.
That's so weird. That is so weird. I'm going to have to look into that. That's just, we have Knott's Berry Farm where I grew up, right? And it's all Camp Snoopy and all of that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, like that's a hard and fast rule is Snoopy's white.
Charles Schultz was
black ears.
He ended up becoming a Californian. He moved to what is that place called north of San Francisco? not Santa Clarita.
Way
up there.
North of San Francisco?
North of San Francisco. It's Santa something. I'll look it up
There's
and figure it out.
There's a lot of Santa. Yeah, I didn't know that. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know he moved to
He
California.
grew up in the Midwest. He was a Minnesota boy. Very conservative Midwest kind of dude. And
he went rural north.
Well, yeah, and there's a museum up there. I'm gonna find this. I will find it. I will find it with God as my witness. Santa Rosa. That's it.
Oh, that's not. Wait, no. That's my stepbrothers live there. My stepbrothers live there. That's like I know
it's a big state, but I mean,
it's only slightly north and to the east of the bay.
If you consider like an hour drive, hour maybe. That's a long. Only in California, someone say like an hour drive. That's like nothing. That's nothing. Like my mom would literally be like, she would be like, I'm not going to the Dayton Mall. I'm not going all the way out there. I'd be like, it's 12 minutes. It's like,
well, yes, to a Californian, that's why I'm like, Santa Rosa. That's not way north. Like
when I started dating my future wife many years ago, she was a California girl, right, and from Northern California, and so we go out. Her parents decided to take us out to dinner. We're going out to a restaurant, and so we get into the car, into the minivan, and we're on the freeway going 80 miles an hour, and we're like in the car for like 30 minutes. I'm like, are you ISIS? Are you going to take us out and kill us? What the fuck is going on? And they're like, oh, we're just going to dinner. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Dinner's 40 miles away. That's like 50. And it was. Yeah. No biggie.
That's just
no bigs.
Normal in California.
Totally.
Believe me, like with my whole family being down there and even though for at least for us in SoCal, like growing up in Whittier, I had an aunt in Orange County. Physically, it's only about 16 miles, but with traffic, it would take at least like 50 minutes or 45 minutes.
Oh, sure.
And you're just like, damn it, I have to go pick up this thing for my mom from her sister, and I got it and you just go. So it's just part of life, in California driving. And yeah, that's why I'm like, no, Santa Rosa's not. This is barely northeast of San Francisco Bay. So that's not a big deal. But anyway, that's going to do it for us. And we've got a lot of guests.
Santa Rosa, I met Johnny Cash in the restroom.
No.
It's true. I went to see Johnny Cash. And I will impart this upon you because I might die like in 5 minutes, but I want to share this with you before I go. So I went to see Johnny Cash, and he was great. And of course, because he was Johnny Cash. Yeah. Anyway, I go. I guess they didn't have a bathroom backstage, so it was a tiny little venue. And he comes, and the man in black goes into the restroom, and he comes in and starts washing his hands first. And he looks at me and he goes first before, and so I said, I didn't say anything. I was just like, wow, it's Johnny Cash. Okay. And he looks at me and he dead on and he goes, always wash your hands first. Treat yourself right. Be a friend to yourself.
Oh, with that voice.
Yeah. With that voice. I mean, and I kind of got what he was saying. Like you shouldn't, it's true. Your hands should probably be clean first.
Well, you guys have external plumbing, right? And
that's true.
Like for us, it's a little more intimate where you kind of have to stick your hands in between your crotch. So I've done that, especially if I've been, out in public, like let's say Knott's Berry Farm or Disneyland or whatever, like before. Yeah. And then you wash again on the way out because.
Yeah, you can do both. But I mean, I took his point. That's like, and I've adjusted, and I actually mostly do what I follow his counsel.
Yeah, you don't want. That's.
I mean, it's true because you're like out in my case.
You don't want to touch
I touch
whatever.
the subway and stuff.
Right? I was gonna say the subway germs, and then you go
you
to.
Don't want that, and
relieve yourself.
And your stuff is like, how dirty could it be? It's under several layers of fabric. I mean, it's not like, it's randomly being attacked by COVID or anything. So
there is like sweat and skin mites and stuff.
That's
but
right.
It's not quite.
It's not as bad as like the New York City subway.
That is not. Yeah. No. That's yeah. You're more likely to get some weird infection just by touching a pole in the New York subway
by
system,
looking at a pole,
then touching your own pole.
And that's
we'll leave it right there.
Things. That's too, and on a high, as Mark Allman said.
That's right. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in on this Monday. We have guests lined up for basically the rest of the week after tomorrow. So a lot of people.
No guests tomorrow yet, right? But we might have. That could change.
Maybe, but there's so much going on. So make sure you guys tune in this week. We're just rolling through. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button.
Subscribe.
No matter
we're at 485 on
what platform you're on. We need your help to grow so we can get monetized and get this going into an actual viable income source for the team, the TMI team. Only 1/3 of us has a real job, Ted. One of the three of us.
It's not the on-air crew.
And it's not us. So
yeah.
So with your help, this can hopefully become an actual paid gig for us. So that would be nice. So anyway, appreciate you guys being here. We'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern. Any last words, Ted?
None at all. You take it away, Manila. Thank you. As always, a pleasure to be here with you.
Likewise. Hasta mañana, everybody. Adios, amigos. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.